All right, you may have noticed some BLM-looking t-shirts around here. And I just want to clarify that they're not actually BLM t-shirts. If you look very carefully, they say EBLM. And if you look at the back, they actually is the antithesis of what BLM stands for. You see real justice, womb to tomb, free markets, active fatherhood, traditional nuclear family, and nonviolence. You see... So the EBLM organization is actually focusing on real solutions to the problems and not trying to, fix things by making them worse by bringing in Marxist principles and such. So this organization, EBLM, was launched about 2 months ago down at Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills, thanks to the kind graciousness of Pastor Rob McCoy. And Neil Mammen is also the president of EBLM as well. And MK, his daughter, is up here modeling the EBLM shirts. So to find out more about EBLM, you can go to everyblm.org or talk to Neil or MK or someone wearing the EBLM shirt. So thank you for that, MK. So huge thanks, of course, to both Pastor Mike and Pastor Rob McCoy. This week we were able to get Charlie Kirk, which we're so excited about, thanks to Pastor Rob McCoy and Pastor Mike. Next week again, we have Eric Metaxas, also thanks to Pastor Rob, and of course Neil has been on Pastor Rob's program down south, and he's started the EBLM organization there. All right, so Neil has a few words to say as well as the president of the VAC. You know, how many people around here get to say they have 25 patents? Well, Neil does, because he's just that cool. Neil's the president of the Values Advocacy Council. He's also an engineer and apologist. The VAC is a non-party... I know, he's always bashful. I always get to pump him up really big since he's one of my great mentors. The VAC is a nonpartisan organization that exists to encourage Christians and churches to be involved in making the laws of our land. We've been holding these Saturday meetings since September when Pastor Mike McClure came up with the idea and teamed up with the VAC to host these sessions leading up to the election. Neil's the author of the controversial book, Jesus is Involved in Politics, Why Aren't You and Why Isn't Your Church?, which you can also get in the Calvary bookstore right after the event as well. The bookstore will be open, so be sure to check that out. We'll have Eric Metaxas' book back there. We'll have Neil's book. I think Neil will even autograph his book if you slip him a few bucks. So, all right, let's welcome Neil Mammen.
Thank you. I know you're not here to listen to me, but before Charlie came, he and his team let us know that he had a Fox News interview that ends around 7. So he will be here. And since we've been holding this since September on Saturday nights from 6 to 8:30, we thought we shouldn't change that schedule. And also, various people have been beating up on me, because I was originally supposed to speak tonight. I know you guys wouldn't have come out to hear me, but we do have a group of about 200 or 250 who do come out. And my time was, people have been beating up on me to actually go over how to vote on the California propositions. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to teach you how to vote. When I say teach you, I'm going to tell you what I think, but I'm going to kind of teach you the principles, because I want you to be able to teach other people. I want you to be able to think about these things on yourself, by yourself, when I'm not around or when other people aren't around. So I want you to be able to be an expert in these things. So we have people handing out these ballot measure propositions. You can get it as you leave. You can also go to our website, vac.org. And we actually, in that website, I go into gory detail about this. But I want to first give you some principles here, because I think it's very important. I always try to start these things by telling you that you have no constitutional rights. Now, a lot of people think, yeah, of course I don't have constitutional rights because they're being taken away from me. But the reality is you never had constitutional rights. You know why you don't have constitutional rights? Because the Constitution doesn't give you any rights. You see, the Constitution actually is a list of negative rights. It takes away rights from the government. And it tells you what the government cannot do. So who does give you rights? The Creator gives you rights. You see, the Declaration of Independence says we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they're endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that amongst these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So if you don't get rights from the government, why do you need a government? Some of you people say, yeah, why do we need a government? I'll tell you why I need a government. It's the next line of that. It says what? And the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, what? Governments are instituted amongst men. So government is not there to give you things. Government is to protect you from the rights that you already have from the Creator. Now, I like to tie this, which is very important, because I've been around the world. I was born in Ghana in Africa, and I grew up around the world. My parents are from India, and I've studied all the different religions, and I can tell you there's only one book, one holy book, that says all men are equal. And you know which one that is? That's the Bible. So it's not only any creator, it is the one single Judeo-Christian creator. That's the only creator that gives everybody equal rights. So what are rights, though? Like somebody says, well, freedom of speech, freedom to own property, liberty. But what is healthcare a right? Now, most of you guys say no, but if I talk to some of my liberal friends, they're going to say, yes, healthcare is a right. Well, is education a right? So how do we tell the difference? So let's play a little game. If you have heard me speak before, then you can't play this game because you know the answers. We'll play a little game. I'm going to flash something up on the screen, and you tell me if it's a right or if something else. Okay? So, this thing, is it a right? See, this is the problem with most American Trump fans. I have some bad news, folks. This is not a right. This is a gun. What is the right? The right is to bear arms. You have the right to bear arms, but you are not entitled to a gun. You have to buy your own stinking gun. Right? You are entitled to nothing but your rights. Okay, what about this? Freedom of speech, is that right? Some of you are a bit nervous because I fooled you last time. Yes, it's a right. It really is a right. Okay, what about this? Now, I know if you are under the age of 30, you have no idea what this is. But if you're over the age of 30, you know what this is. This is what they used to make newspapers with. It's a printing press. Is this a right? No. You got to buy your own stinking printing press. You're not entitled to a printing press. You go, well, oh, okay, I'm starting to get the difference here. Okay, well, let's look at this. Here's a whole list of items here. Some of these are trick questions. A home ownership, a job, healthcare, food, clothing, education. Are these rights or something else? Trick question, though. There is something else, and there is a right in there. Do you see it? Home ownership. You have the right to own a home, but you're not entitled to be given a home. You're not entitled to see the difference there? Now, here is what we have to realize. You go, well, Neil, I'm getting the picture, but I don't understand everything. So let me clarify for you really easy. Rights are things that God gives you. Okay? Like freedom of speech, right? Freedom of religion, freedom to assemble, freedom to worship, right? Is that all right? Amen. What are the something else? The something else we like to call goods and services. Goods and services are the product of someone's labor. You see, this is what you have to realize. If the right depends on somebody else's service, work, or labor, it's not a right, it's a good or a service. And the problem is if I say that labor, if I say that house is my right, where am I going to get the house from? Someone else. And if they built that house, what am I doing? I'm violating their rights. So FDR tried to create a second Bill of Rights. Cooper, can I get your water, please? Thank you. FDR tried to create a second Bill of Rights. In that bill, he wanted to include things like the right to good education, the right to health care, the right to a house, the right to a good-paying job. Thank you, brother. Right to adequate food, clothing, and recreation. But if you have your thinking hat on, you'll realize that all these depend on somebody else doing the work. Doesn't that taste good? And they violate the concept of unalienable rights, because while you should never be prevented from getting a good education. You're not entitled to a good education unless you pay for it. Now, here's the problem. If you are dependent, you have the right to your own goods, but not to somebody else's goods, because that's stealing. So you have a God-given right to your own goods. And if goods are what you're promising to someone, however noble those goods are, like healthcare or home, eventually you have to enslave some men to get those goods and services. Now, like for instance, if we say education is a right, do we enslave all the teachers and force them to teach? Well, no, that would never work. So what do? We enslave all people, and we take some of their labor, and we give it to teachers so that they can teach. And in that process, we're violating the rights of all the people who did not optionally agree to wanting their money used for education, especially people with no kids. You see, our founders were not idiots. They understood quite well why rights were not goods and why they could not write a constitution that guaranteed goods to anyone unless they were the fruit of your own honest hard work. And here's what's very interesting. The constitutions that do guarantee you a Bill of Rights, that have a Bill of Rights for education, jobs, healthcare, and homes are all what? Communist and socialistic documents. And what happens to them? They go bankrupt or they develop into oligarchies. Because when goods are granted as rights, you need enough goods, and people are not going to produce the goods they can't produce. They don't get to keep, so they stop producing those goods, and you get into a situation where there aren't enough goods, and you end up with Venezuela. And that's what's going to happen if we let that. So goods that are granted as rights require to enslave some men fiscally, that's financially, or physically to ensure a continuous supply of the goods that you've promised to others. And sadly, most Americans don't know the difference. And now I want you to remember this difference and teach it to your kids. Now, don't get me wrong. Taxes or fees for services that you require is fine. You own a car, you pay fees for using the road. You own a house, you pay fees for sewage and police protection and fire protection. But it should be proportional to your house. If you've got a bigger house, you need more protection, you pay a little more. But today, your property taxes don't go for protecting you. What do they go for? They go for schools and education and pensions for government workers. So, in this proposition, I want you to look carefully whenever you see that there is a fee not for services, but for goods and services, or not, sorry, a fee, there's a tax for other people's goods and services, then you have to vote no. So here's the thing. The next principle is to always apply free market principles. What are those? The free market basically says government does not know better how two private parties should establish their business contracts. The only thing a business cannot do is violate somebody else's right. But if they say, I'm going to deliver this for this amount of money, the government should never interfere in that. As long as your rights are not being violated, the government does not know the best way to organize business. Number 4, no crony corporatism. Crony corporatism basically is something that America is very good at. Basically what it does is it says rich businessmen will push legislation that will give them an advantage over their competition. In this year's propositions, we see 2 of those very clearly. For instance, a large contractor will push for everyone having a minimum of $2 million worth of insurance, knowing that by forcing the smaller contractors to have more insurance, he will reduce, what? The competition for his services. But it's for the people, he will say. We need the people to be protected, so we better make contractors have more insurance. But that's not the government's role. The government's role is to make sure the contractor notifies you of how much insurance he has, but not tell the contractor, and then you can decide if that's enough for you or not. Number 5, no government charity. For every dollar you give to the government for charity purposes, only 15 cents gets to the poor person. All the rest goes to what? Pensions, buildings, junket trips, I don't know what else, parties, you can go see that. But basically, the poor person only gets 15 cents. The government spends 85 cents on itself. A private charity is quite the opposite. At least 85 cents gets to the poor person, whereas 15 cents goes for administrative fees. I had a great example a few years ago. We had a ad from City Team. City Team's a local charity here, and City Team said it cost the city of San Jose $60,000 per homeless person per year. It cost City Team $12,000. We had the mayor come speak for us. We invite all sorts of people to speak at these events, and the mayor spoke for us, and somebody raised his hand and asked him about this question. The mayor said, "Where'd you get those numbers from?" And the guy said, "From your website." And the guy who wrote the ad was in the audience, and he said, something I didn't mention when I asked the mayor that question was that after we spend the $12,000, the person was off the streets. the city will spend that $60,000 again and again and again every year. And that's for crime, that's for emergency treatment, that's for ambulances, and goes down the line, and you're not helping the poor person. So always vote no for government welfare. The church can do a job far better than that. I really have to tell you the story real quick. I was on a radio show. I've been on a bunch of radio shows. I've been blessed that way. And I was on this one radio show with a really liberal host. And we're having this conversation. I talk about how the church can replace charity, and they're 6 times more efficient. This lady comes on. It's a liberal show, by the way. The host is liberal, but he's nice. And he keeps you on for 20 minutes, and then he keeps you on for another 20 minutes. And I end up saying all 3 hours of the show. Why? Because people want to call up and yell at me. I can handle it, right? So they're yelling at me, and halfway through the yelling process, this lady calls up and says, well, you're just mean-spirited. Because I told her I'd grown up in Africa, and the government hospitals were always far worse than the missionary hospitals. She said, you think your church can do this? You think I went to my hospital the other day, and they had the latest CAT scan equipment, the latest MRI equipment. You think your church can do that? And I said, well, ma'am, let me ask you a question. She goes, what? I said, what is the name of your hospital? Long silence. I go, man, can you tell us the name of your hospital? Long silence. The host starts chuckling because he knows exactly where this is going. He says, ma'am, please tell us the name of your hospital. She says, St. James, but it's not important. I said, ma'am, the only reason it's called St. James is because it was started by the church. Somewhere along, there's probably still a church board. The only reason why why medical bills cost so much is because the government has gotten involved. And as Ronald Reagan said, if you want sand to be unobtainable and expensive, have the government give it away for free. Because some crony corporate will go, we can't give away just regular sand. You have to have graded sand. We have to check it out. We have to get quality sand. Oh, and you can't have people going to the beach to gather sand. We better put a barrier there. And that's what happens with medical services. There's a limit on how many doctors can get their licenses. Why? Crony corporatism. Okay, let's keep going. Always vote for the lesser of 2 evils that can win. Don't abstain. Remember this, if Hitler was running against Billy Graham, and you voted for Billy Graham, you're still voting for the lesser of 2 evils. Because Billy Graham is not Jesus. So you always have to vote for the lesser of evils. If you're upset about the nature and the quality of the candidates, that's our fault. If we Christians were more involved in politics, we would be fighting over which 2 godly men or women we should be voting for. Next one, lack of money is not the problem. Most schools, fire programs, when you see these propositions, they will say, but it's for the children. But it's for the firemen. That's not the problem. Lack of money is never the problem. You collected for the children and the firemen last time. The problem is you are wasting money. And in my family, if we need something new and we can't afford it, we give up something or we move funds from one place to another. So you know what? If you want more money for the children, I think that's a great thing. Take the money from somebody else who doesn't need the money. But don't ask me to pay more taxes. So hold them responsible for fixing it with the money they already have. No bonds. A bond is 2 or 3 times the cost of a tax. What the bond says basically is we don't have the money now, so we're going to pay twice as much for it later. And I'll show you that when in one of these we have a bond in the thing in California. If they don't have the money, they need to cut back on something, no bonds. Next one, no new taxes. Quite simple, no new taxes. Why? Because we don't want the government to be involved in taking our goods away, right? Or supplying goods. Remember, it's the government's job to provide goods, to protect rights rather, not to provide goods. This is really easy. More transparency is always better. And this is very important. Don't give the government any more power. And we as conservatives have to remember this. We're like, oh yeah, if we give this president more power, this senator more power, that'll be better. No, because any power you give a president you like or a senator you like will be power that a president you don't like and a senator you don't like will have. Less power all the time, every time. Okay, let's go through the first proposition, Proposition 20. Tougher on parole. These are only 2 propositions that you're going to vote for, I shouldn't say you're going to, you can do whatever you want. Sorry. There are two propositions that I recommend you vote yes on, and these are the two. The first two are this. Proposition 20, tougher on parole, property crimes. In simple words, ever since they passed laws that made it not a felony to steal anything under $950, guess what all crimes have been? Not all, most crimes have been. Right? This proposition fixes that and a few other things. In fact, there was a report of a criminal a felon who said whenever he went to steal something from a store, he would take a calculator and make sure he was under $950. Okay, this proposition says, this proposition says yes on that. It says we'll stop that, so yes on that. Okay, the next one. Proposition 22. This is crony corporatism. The unions and some large companies, like taxi companies, wanted to stop Uber and Lyft from competing with them. So they made up a false narrative about worker oppression. It's for the workers, right? It's like the contractor. Oh, we want to protect the innocent old lady, so we have to have more more insurance. It's the same idea. Oh, we got to protect the workers from oppression by Uber and Lyft. They don't believe in the free market. This proposition stops those cronies, so this is a yes. Yes on 22. And again, we do have the handouts, and this is, again, all available on our website. Okay, now, I want to really briefly cover this idea. It's called the double your vote idea. This church, as you know, has been hit with $250,000 in fines. This is an illegal church gathering. This is an illegal protest. Okay, so welcome to the protest, as Mike says every morning on Sunday. Although, as Mike said it, we're just violating the mandate. So here's the deal. I want to tell you something. I want to tell you that this is not a battle between left-leaning socialists and Christians. This is not a battle. I don't think you should spend, I enjoy arguing with non-Christians on Facebook. It's a hobby of mine. But I'm not really there to change their mind, because I don't think I can, because they're brainwashed into something. But here's what you should do. You see, I don't think you need to go on and argue with a single non-Christian about voting the right way in this election. Your battle is right here in the church, right here in the churches across the nation. And why do I say this? I say this is because the dilemma is that we don't have enough Christians sitting on the board of supervisors in this county. Right? I think there's one Christian on that board. There aren't enough Christians in City Hall. There aren't enough Christians in Sacramento. There aren't even enough Christians in Washington, D.C. But you say, wait, Neil, we're a tiny minority. How can we change the laws? How can we do that? How can we get good people elected? Well, that's simply not true. Did you know that there are more Christians, more people who go to church today than in 1776? When the Declaration of Independence was written, there was only 17% of the population was Christian. Today, at any count you look at, there's 46% go to church. 70% attend church. Today, only over 46% attend church, and something like 96% they believe in God. They're not Christians, but they believe in God. Did you know one other thing? Did you know that there are more churchgoers today than the 1860s, when the Christians founded the Republican Party to free the slaves? Why are we hiding in our pews? Why are we trembling that we're this tiny minority? In fact, and get this. Here's the problem. There are about over 60 million evangelical Christians of voting age in America. And yet in every election, we lose by 3 to 10 million votes. Here's why. With 60 million evangelicals in America, almost 40 million of us do not vote. Folks, if just a quarter of those non-voting Christians voted for godly values, not only would you see godly men and women in the election, in your choices for president or anything or governor, but we would win every election in every state and every year. Okay, except Berkeley, maybe. Look, it would be one thing if our nation was becoming Sodom because the evildoers were stronger than us, but they're not. We are responsible for this. So here's what we want. We want you to double your vote. What you do is just find one Christian who doesn't vote. Just one Christian who doesn't vote, and convince them to vote. Should be easy, because most people, now you guys are specially selected. You can't be a Charlie Kirk, so most of you probably vote. You're all interested in politics. But you go home, you'll find your friends and your cousins and your relatives and your neighbors and your Bible study folks who don't vote. You don't need to convince them about right and wrong. They already believe that. You just need to convince them to vote and how important it is. That's what you need. So just double your vote, right? Just double your vote. Go find one person and double your vote. Okay, let's finish up. These propositions are all no's, okay? Real easy. I'm just going to read the top of it. Proposition 14, $5.5 billion in bonds for state stem cell research. Forget it. In simple words, borrow more money and pay back 2 times. They want $11 billion. It'll be like $10 billion to pay it back. No. Okay. Proposition 15, tax on commercial. Okay. In simple words, it's for the children. Okay. It's a funding initiative. It raises property taxes on commercial businesses. It says, oh, if you're a homeowner, we're not going to raise your tax, but we're going to raise your taxes on stores and business. Well, come on. If you raise the property tax on a business, guess what? They're going to raise their food costs. They're going to raise the cost to you. You're going to get less. If you work for a business that now has to pay a higher property tax, guess what? They're going to have less money to give you a raise. This is simply a what? Thank you. Okay. Oh, did I tell you stem cell research was actually very bad because it's not worth the money and it actually has no ethical boundaries to protect murdering babies and using their stem cells. Okay. Proposition 16. Oh, come on. Give me a break. A return to affirmative action. This, folks, is government-sanctioned racism. It's a very dangerous slope, and minorities should be afraid of this. Because think about it. A lot of law is based on precedents. If you can use a law to racially screen and selectively give people benefits today, what happens if this government ever changes to where it doesn't care about minorities? They'll say, well, we have a precedent to use racial selection to give you benefits and to take benefits away. It's very dangerous, and we already voted on this a few years ago, and we said no then, and we say what now? We say no. Okay, by the way, this also discriminates against Asians. Why? Okay, Proposition 17, real quick, would allow parolees to vote? No. Okay, there's a reason why they lost their rights to vote. Now, I understand that there are some people in prison who are unjustly there in prison. Well, we need to fix that, not just give them rights to vote for everyone. Okay, so that's a no. Proposition 18 would have allowed 17-year-olds to vote in the primary if they turn 18 by general election day. Well, there you go. I mean, what is this? This is basically let's gradually lower the voting age till it's 12. Okay, maybe. Okay. Proposition 18, so that's a no. Proposition 19, property taxes. Okay. So some people like this, some people don't this. But here's where I said no. I mean, some people are kind of here and there. But basically, folks over 53 can buy a new house and keep their old property tax. But it cuts another deeper taxes and raises money. And it's for the firefighters. It raises money. Anytime a proposition raises money, that means somebody is paying more taxes. And that is a no. In other words, if you want to cut property tax, do it without raising taxes. Okay. Number 20 we've done. Number 21, rent control. Basically, in simple words, government knows better how to run your business. Folks, every time rent control is run, it actually causes more problems. It's a socialistic way. It decreases housing. It dissuades more apartments from being built, and it creates slumlords. Why does it create slumlords? Because if I can only charge you so much rent, and let's say you're living in this place, it's run down, and to fix it, I have to spend $100,000, but I can never raise your rent, why would I fix it? This is a no. 22 is a yes. I love this one, crony capitalism, kidney dialysis clinic. In simple words, we big hospitals don't like competition from small independent clinics, so we will stop them. Okay, basically, if you're a small clinic, we don't want you to do kidney dialysis because we big hospitals and unions want it. This is simply a what? A no. Okay, now we're getting to the end. Number 24, new consumer privacy rules. In simple words, I'm from the government and I'm here to help you. Look, privacy is important, but if it is important, then I want to sue those big corporations myself. And there are lots of people doing that, so this is a no. Number 25. Oh, this is the worst one. Stop bail. Okay, in simple words, a computer programmer will come up with an amazing program that will decide if someone who needs to show up in court should be released without posting bail, or just be forced to stay in jail. What could go wrong? Who is this amazing programmer? I am an engineer. I have never met this amazing programmer who understood the ethics and the boundaries of the Bell system. Thank you very much. Who died and made him judge? This is a no. Okay, folks, we're coming at the end of this. Here we go. After this, there's a whole bunch of local propositions, right? There's ballot measures A through T and A, B, C, D. B is the only one I have no recommendation on. All the rest are bonds for schools, for libraries, for this, for that. The B is something about term limits. You can look at that and decide if you want to do it. I have no recommendation. But all the rest are for more taxes and bonds. And that is what? That is a no, that is a no, that is a no, no, and no. Thank you. You can find this all on our website. Let me just wrap up here. Folks, this year, this is not a vote for a personality. It's a vote for a platform. There is one group. We're nonpartisan, so I can't tell you what group it is. There's one group who has all the sins of Romans 1 in their platform. The sins that Paul says will bring the wrath of God upon a people. There's one group that does not have the sins, in fact, condemns many of them in their platform. You choose the wrath of God party or the non-wrath of God party. Let me wrap this up before we bring on Cooper. Folks, if anyone says Jesus was not involved in politics, they're wrong. But let me answer this question. If anyone says Christians should not be involved in politics, what they're saying is that all these should still be legal. Slavery, racism, segregation, kidnapped brides, child labor, gladiatorial combat, death games, infanticide, child marriage, temple prostitution, child sexual abuse, child prostitution, wives of property, fair treatment of prisoners, and the equality of mankind should all not be allowed, or would all be allowed except for the equality of mankind. Obviously, I got that wrong. But the point being that every one of those, slavery, racism, kidnapped brides, child labor, would all be legal today if Christians had not gotten involved in politics. All of them were changed by Christians and pastors. Pastors like Mike McClure, pastors like Rob McCoy, pastors like Jack Hibbs, pastors who are out there changing the laws. Folks, if anyone says all you have to do is preach the gospel, let me remind you, the gospel was preached for 200 years in two of the most Christian nations in the world. It was preached every week in those two nations. And the greatest evil that we know, slavery, continued in those two nations for 200 years. It wasn't until Christians said, we have to change the laws, that slavery was stopped. Thank you very much. How can you be heartless to not get involved in politics?